And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you happen to be listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can also find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. You can also find me on Rumble, Coffee Talk 2, although I can no longer cast live to Rumble because I'm on StreamYard. So it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other between StreamYard and Restream, but I can only afford one. So as we get ready to launch off here, you see Miss Kitty sleeping in the chair behind me, keeping me company. There she is, keeping me company. I will go ahead and say hello to some of the people that are chiming in so far on the live portion before we get into the news here. See, Dragon has joined us here today, as well as Helter, Jeff, Brian, Bob, and Sven is here. Glad you could say hello today, and hello to everyone else who is unwilling or unable to chime in, and that's okay. You don't have to. There's no requirement. As we get ready to delve into the realm of the ridiculous, and as you have seen from the thumbnail or surmised from the thumbnail, that was, of course, Voldemort Zeleneskyy, which I gotta be now with Mark Dice. I was watching Mark Dice the other day, and he's doing the Voldemort Zeleneskyy bit and showing the Doge clock, showing the debt clock and focusing on Doge. And I was like, shit, I've been doing that for weeks. I've been calling Zeleneskyy Voldemort for a couple of years. Now all of a sudden he's doing it. Maybe he saw me once. I have no idea. It really doesn't matter, actually. Doesn't matter. But getting ready to jump off here, where there's so many people in the media and especially in social media. And boy, talk about a country divided. There's a lot of people who get it, and a lot of people who are still, they have what is commonly referred to as Trump derangement syndrome. And they want to attack Trump for what happened and for the minute or two of soundbite that they got from that, hour-long press meeting. And they show you the worst of it, but they don't show you all of it. As we get ready to jump in here, and we'll start off, I believe this is the New York Post. I believe this is going to be a New York Post article, right? It says Zeleneskyy was the true instigator of the Oval Office fracas, not an ambush from Trump. Would you really have to see the whole thing to take it into context? Anyways, there are people who they'll never take it into context because they don't want to. They don't want it in context. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to understand it. You can't convince them, and you're wasting your time. Bible tells you don't argue with fools. There's a reason for it. There's a reason for that. You do not want to argue with fools. Sometimes you just got to let it go. So an article reads as such: anybody who watched the entire Oval Office meeting, hold on a moment, because this does not want to hold still, between President Trump and Ukraine President Voldemort. It's Vladimir, but Voldemort Zeleneskyy would know it was not an ambush or a setup by Trump, or as characterized by Democrats and malign media entities. It was the opposite. If anyone came to that meeting in bad faith, it was clearly Zeleneskyy, whose body language and attitude was negative from the start. Trump could not have been more cordial, having steered the complex negotiations with Russia and Ukraine to a first step where he believed peace was a real possibility. But Zeleneskyy had other ideas. He contradicted, interrupted, and insulted Trump. Even before the Vice President J.D. Vance said a single word. It was 11 minutes in when Zeleneskyy first contradicted Trump with a gratuitous defense of Europe's financial support for the war, which Trump repeatedly had said was less than America's. And they go on with some quotes here. But bottom line, and we talked about this last week, a deal had already been struck. All right. There was already a deal in place. Something had already been worked out between the Ukrainian parliament, the United States, and Russia. Okay. And he went in there and wanted to do something else and then flip flopped again because immediately after, when it got to the point where Trump realized what was going on, okay, this guy is trying to bait me because we're on camera having conversations that are better kept behind closed doors. All right, you know what? The meeting's over. And he calls it off because he knows when negotiations aren't working and to stop. Okay? He knows when to stop. Put it that way. And then immediately afterwards, Zelensky's begging for the deal again. Well, which is it? And can you trust that? And Nathan says the guy wants the meat grinder to keep turning. That alone makes him evil. Speaking of Zelenskyy, of course. Brian says he can't stand adamant people who know they are wrong. And Monkey has joined us today, as well as Puck. It's supposed to be a big announcement today. Some saying it's about withdrawing from NATO. Maybe. And T-Bone says never argue with a fool. Bystanders might get confused as to who's who. Yeah, well put. And I see Lucky is here as well, joining us today, and JJ. He says Zelenskyy did meet with prominent Democrats prior to the meeting with Trump and Vance. I wonder if that had any bearing on the tone of the meeting. That is possible. That is possible because he did promote Biden when he was here last time. When he was here begging last time. And the whole bit about him not wearing a suit, I don't really care about that so much. I don't think that's that huge of a deal that he didn't have a suit on, although some people are hammering on that. I don't really care about that. What I care about is the attitude and the dirty laundry. It's like, that wasn't the place or the time for that kind of an argument. Wasn't the place or the time for that kind of an argument. But he did it anyways. Trump saw the negotiations weren't going to work. Something's wrong. You know what? I'll just call this off. And then calling it off turned into, okay, Zelenskyy, just go home. Just go home. And Bob says Zelenskyy met with the king yesterday. Yes, because he immediately ran crying to the UK. He immediately ran crying to the UK. T-Bone says he would have worn his best Hawaiian shirt. I mean, it's just like when Paul Hogan met the Queen. Remember Paul Hogan? Crocodile Dundee. Toss another shrimp on the Barbie. He was the spokesman for Australia in the 80s, and he did the Crocodile Dundee films. There were 3 of them, weren't they? I think there was 3. But he met the Queen, and he's wearing a wife beater and shorts or something, if I remember correctly, and everybody's laughing their ass off, and they're going, wow, that's classic Paul Hogan. Paul Hogan staying in character even that far. But, whatever. I don't really care that Zelenskyy didn't have a suit on. He wasn't dressed like a slob. I'll give him that. But that wasn't the place for that. And a deal had already been made. The deal is the deal is the deal. Just like in The Transporter. The deal is the deal, right? He doesn't, apparently not if you're Zelenskyy. Nathan says people wear suits for the audience, not themselves. Wearing formal clothes is a sign of respect for the people you're meeting. He simply disrespected them. Yeah, that's part of the argument. And I get it, I don't think that's the biggest part of the deal, is because he's always dressed that way coming to the United States. He's gotten used to that, to the idea that that's acceptable. No one ever said anything to him before. Why should he stop now? And that'll be your counter argument on that. That'll be your counter argument on that. But he's being portrayed as a patriot. I mean, this is, you see people all through the social media. This is what a patriot looks like. This is Zelensky's a real man. Yeah. Okay, Zelensky's a real man. Do you want to see your real man? Do you want to see a real man? I'll show you a real man. Hang on a second here. Let me make sure that's paused. Here's your real man in action. And I'm being facetious here. I'm going to show you a younger Zelenskyy. This is Voldemort Zelensky when he was a professional interpretive dancer. That's him right there with the breasts. JJ says Zelensky's still better dressed than Fetterman. Yeah, Fetterman has no freaking excuse. And Armin says all the U.S. has to do is walk away. Russia can take care of the rest. Indeed. And that's really what it boils down to, because it's not our problem. People want to paint this guy as a patriot and, oh, he stands for Ukraine and I stand with Ukraine. And I'm still sick and tired of seeing blue and yellow flags on everybody's social media. I stand with Ukraine. Unless you are funding it yourself or willing to go there, you are not standing with them. So shut up. Seriously, I'm sorry. I gotta call that one. You don't stand with them. You donate your own money instead of donating my tax dollars, and you go your ass down there. You remember back in the day when people would actually go to these places? Oh, there's something going on in Europe. I've got to go. Let me go enlist or whatever the hell. People used to actually go and throw their cards in, or they spend their own money. I don't see that happening. I see people, oh, I stand with Ukraine. And that essentially means they put a little blue and yellow flag on their social media. That's what that means. It doesn't mean the same thing anymore. Shut up, you don't stand with Ukraine. You're such a fraud. It frustrates the hell out of me. What is it that you think you're standing for? What is it you think Trump is trying to do? Oh, Trump is kowtowing to Russia. He's kowtowing to Russia. Is he? Oh, by the way, this clip that I'm showing of a younger Zelensky dancing with like fake breasts there, you can find a ton of that stuff because he did a lot of it. Okay, he did he did a lot of that kind of stuff. What Trump is doing is looking at the long game. For some reason, Europe does not understand this or does not want to, and I'll emphasize on this here in a moment. They seem to want to get into a massive conflict with Russia, okay, which will be World War III, which is what Trump was suggesting. You know, you're tinkering with World War III here. You're asking for it practically. You're tampering with the idea. I don't know how he exactly worded it, but I remember him saying it, that you're toying with the idea. Okay? And why is Europe so far behind this? Here's your tinfoil hat moment. Maybe this is another way for the elitists to help to cull the population, because the collateral damage accumulated in war would certainly do the job. We can't kill you with the shots. We can't kill you with genetically modified mosquitoes. We can't kill you with the poison we're putting in the food. Hey, let's just have another huge freaking war. Europe never, if we're being honest, Europe never really recovered from World War I, all the way back in the early 1900s, beginning of the 20th century, which is why they didn't want to get involved in World War II. They hadn't recovered, not truly. And Europe, much of Europe still has not recovered from World War II. There is no British Empire anymore. Why do you think that is? The war bankrupted them. France was never the same. France is a socialist nightmare ever since Germany was overthrown and thrown out of France finally during World War II. They've never fully recovered. So you want to create a situation by which, what is it, 32 member states of NATO? Am I correct? Is it 32? Gets into it with Russia for bringing Ukraine in because Ukraine still wants to be part of NATO. Russia's not going to back off because of NATO. They don't give a shit about NATO. And then they go and get their Middle Eastern and Asian allies, which will bring China into it. And then we're in a war that goes on for 5 to 10 years. And then spend the next century recovering from that. That's the long game. This is what you want? You think, oh, You don't believe that Putin will stick to any deals that are struck, but you do believe that he'll be scared of NATO if Ukraine joins NATO. That you believe. Ugh. Where are we here? Let me catch up a couple of comments here. Sven says that Zelensky's a scumbag. Nathan says he's a clown. Kevin says he doesn't see Zelensky as a hero or a villain, friend or foe. He's a politician. He knows he exists only as long as he has support and money pouring in. Okay, fair enough. Sven said if they stand with Ukraine, send money or buy a plane ticket. DIY specialist says war is a terrible thing. Yes, it is. Armin says Zelensky should have stayed in entertainment. He's still in entertainment. He's just more serious now. JJ says if people truly want to stand with Ukraine, they're welcome to enlist through the Ukrainian embassy. They could be on the front lines in a matter of weeks. I know. Puck said he was going to stand with Rhodesia, but they folded before I graduated high school. Armin says America should walk from Europe. They can fund and fight their own wars in a soccer field. And Anarchy is here from rural Minnesota. And Armin wants to know if we really need to be in Asia too. Not really. But that, North Korea is already tipping on it, sending in like engineer corps and stuff like that. I don't think the North Koreans are really fighting, but they are there. It would give them an excuse to actually have boots on the ground fighting men, which would involve China. It's as simple as that. Which China doesn't really want that, despite all their bravado. But they'll do it to save face. They'll do it to save face. Let me pull that up about member states. Let me see here. I got an image of it, I'm sure. Here we go. I want to say it's 32. If you look it up, you get all kinds of numbers. Anywhere from 30 to 32 member states in NATO. And there's all your countries that would be dragged into it. Here we go. There's all your countries that would be dragged into it, as well as the dates that they first got involved. Most of them 1949 and then 1952. Yeah, Turkey, Germany, Spain. So basically, rattling them off here really quickly. Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, or excuse me, Iceland, not Ireland. Norway, Portugal, United Kingdom, United States, Greece, Turkey, Germany, Spain, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Finland, and Sweden. Most of which really won't contribute much. Bottom line, it'll be the United States and the United Kingdom. Maybe Germany. Throwing the most chips in. That's the long term. This is what Trump's trying to avoid. That's what he's trying to avoid. And people just do not respect that. They don't understand it. I stand with Ukraine. Oh, the United States needs to realize this and that. And oh, Putin will back down if they join NATO. Why? Plus, I mean, there's a lot of things that have been going on in the Ukraine that the American population are unaware of, if they're even willing to listen. If they're even willing to listen. Since 2022, Zelenskyy has banned, I think, 11 political parties from operation, arrested those people, confiscated their property. That's a very communist thing to do. So he basically bans his opposition, puts them in jail, and steals all of their stuff. And everybody goes on about how, oh, well, it's wartime. They can't hold an election because his term is up. It's been up since last year. I think, right? Last year? Like May of last year or something. And they're like, well, it's wartime. And I get that. But if that happened in the United States, people would be pissing their pants. If the United States went to war at the last minute, and Trump was like, oh God, we're at war, martial law, I've got to stay president, people would shit themselves. But it's okay if Zelenskyy does it. I mean, that's pretty hypocritical if you ask me. Pretty hypocritical. And I believe he also pushed for state religion. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he ban Russian churches? Which is why the people in the far eastern bloc of his country wanted to go back to Russia in the first place. Didn't he shut down the news outlets at all of the Ukrainian television stations, and now the media is fully controlled by the state? It sounds like the old Soviet Union. But he's the hero. He's the patriot. I must have missed something. Maybe there's something I don't understand. Maybe there's something I don't understand. Puck said that Trump signs a minerals deal with Ukraine. He then takes ownership of Biden's Project Ukraine, which is not good. And Nathan says we have population collapse in many developing countries, Japan, China, Australia, America. War is not necessarily needed to reduce the population. Economic stress is. And John has joined us. You see Miss Kitty is sitting behind me, John, in the chair. She looks very comfortable. She's been practically sleeping on top of my head the last few nights. Flute Man says it's always acceptable when someone else does it, but gets pissed off when our own government does it. That is correct. And Peter said Ukraine already signed mineral deals with the United Kingdom. But that's the offer, because they changed their mind almost immediately, or he did. I had read something that said that his entourage was practically in tears because they're so freaking scared and upset about how badly that meeting went. GB News article here coming up. Zelenskyy ready to sign mineral deal with the United States just days after being booted out of the White House. So like I said, he had flip-flopped almost immediately, because he said on the way out the door, he was saying, no, wait, I will sign. And, Trump didn't want to hear it now. He didn't trust him. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said he is ready to sign a minerals deal with the United States days after a tense meeting in the White House. The Ukrainian president said he just wanted the Ukrainian position to be heard, like we didn't know what it was. When he was questioned about the meeting with Trump and Vance, Trump told Zelenskyy in the Oval Office, you're gambling with millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. That's how he phrased it. Gambling with. I had forgotten how he phrased it. Urging him to just accept the deal. The deal allegedly involves no security guarantee by the U.S. to Ukraine, which has been a key demand in the war-torn country so far. Zelenskyy told a press conference in London yesterday, if we agree to sign the minerals deal, we're ready to sign it. The agreement that's on the table will be signed if the parties are ready. So now we're back to I'll sign the deal. Basically, it comes as J.D. Vance accused the Ukrainian president of being disrespectful, saying he hadn't been thankful enough for U.S. military aid. I don't know about that. I think that was just Vance being pissed off. I don't know if he's been well, and also, it depends on your perspective. There's a difference between saying thank you and being thankful or being grateful. You know what I mean? And Peter says the U.S. needs to walk away from Ukraine and sign a mineral deal with Russia. As I had speculated, I mean, is this like, why are these European countries pushing so hard? Do they really honestly think Russia will just back off if Zelenskyy did get involved, or Ukraine did get involved with NATO? Is it an elitist thing here? Like I said, tinfoil hat time. Is this an elitist sort of thing whereby people are, there are people at the upper echelon of like thinking that they run the planet, believing it'll help to cull the population because there's too many people. Global warming. Oh yeah, we don't say global warming anymore. We say climate change. I forgot. I forgot. I mean, what is it that they're hoping to accomplish? What is it ultimately that they're hoping to accomplish with all of that? What do they think is going to happen? Do they think they're going to stick it to Russia? As I had pointed out, I mean, I half-hearted believe that the Biden administration and key factors in Europe believed that they were going to somehow defeat Russia in a proxy war. And we talked about that at length on Friday, because you're not going to beat Russia in a proxy war because Russia doesn't really have any debt. The United States is 36 trillion in debt. Russia is less than $500 billion in debt. It's like 468 billion, primarily because they're at war. That's not going to be hard for them to fix. We're the ones that will lose in a proxy war, and Europe too, because Europe is also in considerable debt all across the board, partially due to the European Union. Incredible. Incredible. Raccoon is here. Says Zelensky called Vance bitch whore in Ukrainian under his breath. This guy has no class. You come into our house and insult the vice president. I can't imagine what he said about Trump. I did not catch that. I don't know Ukrainian anyways, but I did not see that anywhere. Sven says Russia's rare earth is better quality and there's far more of it than the Ukraine. And Peter said they changed it to climate change after the 2009 climate gate. And from my understanding, a lot of the reasons why there is temperature differences on Earth is tied to changes in Jupiter's atmosphere. Look it up. I'm not kidding. Actually, my wife and I watched a whole documentary, a very recent documentary on Jupiter the other day, because the storm is shrinking. It's been shrinking for decades, but it's getting smaller and smaller, the main eye storm. And it does affect the Earth. It also protects the Earth because it creates a massive gravity well that prevents a lot of meteors or asteroids, whatever, and comets flying from space from actually reaching Earth. But that changes, atmospheric changes on Jupiter cause temperatures to rise and fall on Earth as well because it's so much gravity involved. But yeah, climate change. It's because you used a plastic straw instead of a paper one. Your straw was the last straw. Now we're all going to die. As Zelensky, who doesn't miss a beat, leaves the United States and immediately runs to the United Kingdom, clutching a box of Kleenex with his panties in a bunch. AP News, Associated Press, Zelensky embraced by British Prime Minister a day after the White House blowout. Don't worry, Zelensky. We'll take care of you with British tax dollars. Thank you. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer embraced Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Saturday and told him he had the UK's unwavering support. A day after the blowout at the White House, Zelensky arrived to cheers from people who were paid to gather. Oh, excuse me, that's my interjection. Who had gathered outside of 10 Downing Street, where Starmer gave him a hug and ushered him inside. The two of them gave each other a hand job in the bathroom. I'm sorry, I'm improvising again. The two leaders met on the eve of a meeting of European leaders in London, called to discuss how European nations can defend the Ukraine. That's starting again. I don't know why. And themselves, that is, back to the article. If the U.S. withdraws support, it has taken on new urgency following Trump's televised berating of Zelensky. Quote, and as you heard from the cheers on the street outside, You have a full backing across the United Kingdom, Stalmer told the leader of the war-torn country. We stand with you, Ukraine, for as long as it may take. I know I switched up the accent. Zelenskyy thanked him. Then he got off his knees. I'm sorry, I can't help it. Zelenskyy thanked him and the people of the United Kingdom for their support and friendship. After the meeting, Britain announced it was extending a 2.26 billion pound, that is 2.84 billion in cash, American, loan to Kiev. Why is everybody else gives them a loan, but we have to, with us, it's a gift? That was part of Trump's argument. For military procurement, with the money coming from the profits on frozen Russian assets. It's Britain's contribution to a $50 billion package of support. Wow, $50 billion. Pledged by the G7 group of wealthy and industrialized nations. So Russia will get that money back when you need more gas and oil. Oh, man. Peter said they also moved many of the weather temperature stations. I have records of it in New Zealand. Puck says he called JD a bit. Yeah, that's right. That's what Raccoon just said. And all people said Zelenskyy already made a mineral deal with the UK. Kier and Zelenskyy are devils. And JJ said Stalmer isn't popular with his own citizens. I think there's a petition out to redo the election. Yeah, I mean, if there was any cheering out there, it was staged. It was staged because you can't protest in the UK anymore. You can't do shit there. You can't do a damn thing. Zelenskyy thanked Britain in a statement on X, saying, "There is true justice. The one who started the war must be the one to pay." Yeah, okay. And it goes on to say Zelenskyy will meet with King Charles III on Sunday, which I believe has already happened, before the European summit, but the timetable for their bilateral meeting was apparently sped up in the aftermath of the Washington visit. Good for him. Good for you, Zelenskyy. Oh, Puck said he also said he responded to a question about Trump with FM. I see. I see. Oh, and when's the last time that Britain had a popular prime minister? That you didn't question how they got elected in the first place anyways. But don't worry. It's not only the UK getting out the Vaseline for Zelenskyy. It's not just the UK, because Canada also has plans for your tax dollars. Anybody watching from Canada today? I know we have viewers from Canada. And this is from the Canada's own government website. This is Canada's own government website. So there's no mistaking it. Okay? This is www.pm.gc.ca. This is Canada's own government website. Quote, "For over 3 years, Ukraine has fought with extraordinary courage and resilience against Russia's illegal full-scale invasion." Is any invasion in any country legal? This ongoing aggression is not only a violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, but also a direct attack on the rules-based international order, freedom, and democracy everywhere. Canada remains steadfast in its support for Ukraine and its people as they continue to defend their independence. Yeah. Canada or the Canadian government? The Prime Minister, Justin Hoser, today participated in the securing of our future summit in London, United Kingdom, hosted by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Sir Keir Starmer. The summit brought together Euro, Atlantic, and NATO leaders to promote unity, reinforce collective security, and reaffirm our unwavering commitment to Ukraine in the face of Russia's continued aggression. Anytime they tell you collective security and reaffirm, what was that? Promote unity and reinforce collective security. Yeah, when they, anytime they want to talk about safety and security, you should be scared. During the securing, our future summit, the Prime Minister announced new sanctions against 10 individuals and 21 entities, including a paramilitary organization and their leaders, to help counter Russia's reliance on third-party organizations and countries to advance its political and military objectives in Ukraine. How many paramilitary organizations are there in Canada that are on their way to Russia right now to help fight against the Ukraine? Just asking. How many? How many militias are there in Canada? Anybody care to answer that question? It says, to date, Canada has imposed sanctions on over 3,000 individuals and entities complicit in Russia's aggressions, and we remain committed to working with our partners to increase economic pressure on Russia. Does Russia need anything from Canada? What is Canada importing to Russia that Russia needs anything from Canada? Are they not going to be able to put real maple syrup on their pancakes? What the hell? But the meat of this, well, let me move down through here because I did already read this article, okay? This is the meat of the subject. All right. This includes almost $20 billion in multifaceted assistance, ranging from military aid such as armored vehicles and drone technology to humanitarian and financial assistance to help Ukraine rebuild and recover. $20 billion that Canada doesn't have, that it should be spending on its own people. Or how about you just stop taxing the shit out of them? How about that? How about that? All people suggest that Justin Castro was planted into the position in Canada. Yeah, I believe it. Peter says they're globalists. He says another terrorist attack in Germany and the people voted for AFD, yet the globalists are in power. I see. Flukeman said British children are encouraged to inform teachers or police if they see something offensive, even at home. And Nazi Germany and Soviet Union, yeah, did the same thing. Correct. See something, say something. They try to do that here. They try to get kids to rat on their parents in the United States as well. There you go. Sven says the royal order of the flatulent goose. And Puck said Zelensky must have had the same M16 CIA or handlers or MI6 that would explain his behavior at the meeting, perhaps. But there you go. There's Canada throwing another $20 billion into the ring. Standing with Ukraine. Like they all say, oh, we're standing with Ukraine. We stand united. And then they got this picture. You can't see it very well, but they got this picture of Trudeau. It looks like he's about 25 years old in the corner there. They must have airbrushed the hell out of that. These people, I swear. And again, where's the money coming from? I got to wonder how much longer Canada can hang on before they squeeze their people to the point where they can't recover. They can't recover anymore. And Rodney made a donation to the channel. Thank you, Rodney. As always, very much appreciated, and goes a long way towards helping us with our shelter cats, our little happy feline family. Our clouder is the term, clouder of cats that we look after. Much appreciated, Rodney. Peter said they had kids turning in their parents under Obama. Yes. And the idea, the guise of that is that, oh, you know, if our child is being abused or something like that, then you should be able to step forward, which you should. But it was that whole system was used for a lot of other things. And odds are, if some kid unfortunately really is being abused or tormented, they're probably not going to say anything. And that's the sad part. That's the sad part. But speaking of Canada, maybe you saw this already over the weekend. Hey, Miss Kitty. Miss Kitty moving around back there. She tries. She tries. Poor thing. You got to wonder what she's been through. Speaking of Canada, I give you Mike Myers. And this is a People magazine article. I don't know if you saw this. You probably heard about this. I doubt that anybody watching this very likely watched an episode of SNL in years. But Mike Myers making a statement, and they're talking about it. It says, Mike Myers wears Canada is not for sale shirt on SNL, an apparent jab at Trump's 51st state comments, which we all know he was being snarky. Trump was making jokes. But here you go. It says, the Canadian comedian's show of patriotism followed his surprise cameo as Elon Musk during the March 1st episode, which he did do that. They made fun of the meeting in the Oval Office, and they had Myers dressed like Musk run out and do something stupid. And at the end of the show, without reading all of this, and it says he's 61 years old now, surprise guest appearance. And at the end of the show, when they do their closing bit, and they all stand there and say goodbye to everybody, he opens up his jacket and shows the shirt, and it says Canada is not for sale, and that's his statement. Okay. Sven says Mike should tell Canada to stop cashing our checks then. Yeah. And that's his statement. The Canadian comedian and actor. But is he really? While he wants to sit there and say Canada is not for sale. And by the way, Mike, Canada sold, the Canadian government, that is, sold Canada out a long time ago. Okay? Sold it out a long time ago and put its people up the river. But you wouldn't know that because you really haven't been to Canada since 1988. Look it up. I'm not kidding. He moved to the United States in 1988 to pursue further his comedy and acting career. Got a good gig on Saturday Night Live and basically has lived in New York ever since. He does. I believe he also has a house in Vermont, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of very, very valuable, expensive, multi-million-dollar properties. But he's not in Canada. Furthermore, he's got citizenship in the United States. He's actually a tri-citizen. I think he still retains Canadian citizenship, but he also has US and UK citizenship. But he doesn't go to Canada. It's like William Shatner. William Shatner came to the United States in the 60s, and except for a couple of Star Trek conventions, has never gone back to Canada. And if you look at the consistency, a lot of Canadian stars that leave Canada and go somewhere else and become stars, they don't go back. So why try to pretend like you have any patriotism to Canada, Mike? I don't think he even owns any property out there. And you guys can look it up for yourselves. If I made a mistake, just tell me in the comments. I believe all the properties he owns are in the United States. Excuse me. And Puck said blue cities are the closest thing we have to Nazi Germany or USSR. No need for a passport. So I catch up a couple of things here. Catch up a couple of comments. Flukeman says, I know Hong Kong free speech is non-existent in terms of tax. They demolished inheritance tax 9 years after handover. And if I'm not mistaken, income tax is 15% regardless of income. Bruce is here. He says, a little late. Hello from the People's Republic of California. Glad you could make it. All people said Meyer made his entire fortune in the U.S. and has lived here for decades. Now suddenly he's a patriotic Canadian. Exactly my point. Exactly my point. He's been here almost 40 years. In 2028, it'll be 40 years. And as far as I know, he's never looked back. Never looked back. What a fraud. Rodney says we need to remember that these actors are paid to do things in front of the camera. True. Until recently, a chunk of that cash came from U.S. taxpayers. And Tuck says, I've never been a huge fan of his, definitely not the funniest actor or director. Puck said, virtue signaling Canada is far too a way to stand with. Yeah. And Chillin Davis joined us. Glad you could make it. Glad you could make it. And all people makes, I'll put that up here right there, because Kamala did go to school in Canada. That's true. I'll put that comment up from all people real quick. Yeah, he's not, again, he's a U.S. citizen. He does have tri-citizenship, UK and Canada, but he doesn't go back to Canada. He doesn't own property there as far as I'm aware. I did look. And I don't know if this is the best move for him right now, considering he's got Shrek 5 in the works, and it looks pretty bad so far. Weird and woke is what I'm hearing. And John Boy is here. What did I miss? A lot about Zeleneskyy, but it'll be saved, and you can go back and look at it again if you wanted to. He, you know, I hate all the virtue signaling. I really hate it. I could understand if he was still a citizen, but again, Canada sold Canada out. Canadian government has been selling their people out for years, selling them down the river, putting people in jail. Who remembers when not too long ago, a couple of years ago, right? Protesters waving the Canadian flag were arrested on camera. Who remembers that? Who remembers that? Who remembers that? And, you know, speak it while we're talking about celebrities really quick. This one kind of threw me too. I'll do another celebrity one. I'll do another celebrity one really quickly here. And it's Adam Sandler, another Saturday Night Live alumnus who, just like Mike Myers, has to be taken with a grain of salt as to how funny they are. Yeah, there you go. Habibi says, and the Canadian truck drivers who had their accounts frozen, correct. And the tow truck drivers who did not want to tow those vehicles, who had their business licenses threatened if they didn't. Yeah, very, very communist, the entire way that they operated. This is a SF gate, that's San Francisco gate, I believe. Oscars scene stealer Adam Sandler rocks Steph Curry's shoes during viral moment. Okay, I'm not going to read the article, but I am going to make the point here. Okay, there's Adam Sandler in his hoodie and shorts, which is how he always dresses anyways. He always dresses like he's on the subway. All right. And they're giving them this big viral moment on the Oscars. All right. Big viral moment as he gets into it with Conan O'Brien, who was hosting this year, I believe. I didn't watch the Oscars, but I have seen the clip. And all these people, social media is lit up with people talking about how, Adam Sandler's is the GOAT. Adam Sandler's, man, he's just one of the guys. Adam Sandler's, he's so great. Adam Sandler's, you know, he's just showing his true self. Okay. You're going to tell me that many people don't know that that was staged? You could hear Adam very clearly, couldn't you? Did you see a boom mic? He's got a microphone under the hoodie. That's why he could be heard so clearly. He was louder than Conan O'Brien up on the podium with the microphone. That was staged, like all the other things that they do. Like the slap was staged. Will Smith and the slap, where they have 50 shots of the audience reaction, but one angle on the slap. One angle on the slap, and Chris Rock closes his eyes and leans into it, which it's not exactly live. It's 2.5 minutes, I believe, preempted. So if anything goes wrong, they can cut it off and jump to commercial. They didn't cut it off, did they? But the problem is they went too far with the Will Smith and the slap to back up and say, no, we staged that. We staged it. And if you don't think that kind of stuff goes on, go back to let me see, what's a good example? Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren at the Cannes Film Festival for the showing of Universal Soldier, probably one of Van Damme's best films. Universal Soldier, right? And they had a fight, they had a brawl at the festival and had to be pulled apart. And then I think a couple of months later, Van Damme was on the Arsenio Hall show. Look it up. Okay, I always tell people, please look this stuff up, because to show you I'm not just making things up, and two, in case I made a mistake and you can tell me. Okay. He's on the Arsenio Hall show, and Arsenio Hall asks him about that, and he was like, "Oh no, me and Dolph are cool. That whole thing was a setup to promote the movie." He flat out admitted it. But we're supposed to believe this is real. And everybody's like, "Oh, Adam Sandler's the GOAT." Adam Sandler is an actor. An actor. And H12 says he remembers the truckers, that happened at the trucker strike. Excuse me. The truckers, right? And Chillin says the baker that didn't want to make a cake for a gay marriage wasn't treated right. No, he was not. I don't know where that came from, but that's okay. No, he was not treated right. 10 years in and out of court, he finally won, and the case was finally thrown out and shut down. But he never should have had to go to court in the first place. They could have found someplace else to do that cake. They could have found someplace else to do the cake. And All People says everything they do is staged. They're pathetic. Raccoon says, I guess they needed to do something like the Will Smith slap. They needed to do something more low-key. More low-key than that, because they don't need that kind of controversy again. It was done for publicity, and it went badly. It went badly. Carrick says, they're a joke. We watch old TV shows and movies. Thank you. My wife and I also. We prefer vintage television and movies. And we have a routine that we do. We've talked about it in great detail on our other channel, on the Collector's channel, or the Collector's channel, on the Nostalgia channel that we do. Hold on a second. Which is that. Open by Chance on YouTube. We've talked about it at length. But yeah, we watch primarily vintage stuff. Primarily vintage stuff. Sven says no arrest on the assault. No, it propelled Chris Rock back into interest. He went from like not practically having to shut down concerts to being sold out everywhere, because it made Chris Rock relevant again. Made him relevant again. I have to skip over because there's a lot of comments pouring in, which brings us to the other fake news. May as well make it a trifecta of fake news at the end. Why not? Because we talked a crap ton about Zeleneskyy there at the beginning of the broadcast. Podcast. Here's the other BS. Does this work? It's StreamYard is slowing down a little bit. Here we go. WWE, and this is on CBS Sports. Like, this is a sport anymore. WWE Elimination Chamber 2025 results. John Cena turns heel on Cody Rhodes with The Rock there. Who cares? And hearing about this is people don't understand. They thought because he's been a big face for 2 years, that is, Cena has been a good guy for 21 years, that his turning heel would be massive. It wasn't. They thought it would be bigger than when Hogan turned heel at Bash in the Beach in 1996. and it wasn't. Okay. And that's really obvious. One, back in those days, there was a strong emphasis on not admitting that anything was scripted. You could tie a wrestler to a chair and break all of his fingers and toes, and he wouldn't admit it was scripted. Nowadays, they openly admit it, and everybody knows. So there was always that in the back of your mind. Was that real or not? Was it real or not? That was always in the back of your mind, even in the 90s, for a lot of people who were really into that kind of wrestling when it was still WWF. So Hulk Hogan doing it was huge, especially since whether they like Hulk Hogan or not, because a lot of people sit there, oh, he's a terrible wrestler, he's a lousy guy, he lies. They all lie. Whether you liked Hogan or not, he was instrumental in creating wrestling or bringing the attention to wrestling that left it where it is today. It was no big deal before that. He made it an international, huge, big deal. He was instrumental, whether you like Hogan or not. You got to give him credit. Him turning heel, massive. John Cena turning heel, nobody cares. Especially since nobody likes Cena anyways, because of how badly he's kowtowed China over the last few years. Kissing their ass. And then Dwayne Johnson's up there. Nobody likes him either. Nobody likes these people anymore. Nobody likes these people anymore. And where did something about Andy Kaufman come from? Tuck says Kaufman was creepy, hadn't thought of it before, but yeah. He mentioned Andy Kaufman because I know Kaufman, he was into it with Jerry Lawler, and that was staged, and he was the one, I'll wrestle any female wrestler, and then Lawler got involved. That's another, you know what? That's another staged tie-in. Maybe that's why somebody brought it up. This when Lawler slapped him out on the Letterman show, Late Night with David Letterman, slapped him and he fell on the floor. That was staged. That was staged. Kaufman was an asshole, though. He was a professional ass. I don't think he was so much funny as a sensationalist. So much as a sensationalist, just doing weird things or obnoxious things for attention rather than comedy, and had the potential to be a really good comedian. It just wasn't, unfortunately. Sven says, oh, there's something interfering with this. Let me close that window. Says Cena had such an opportunity to not be a bitch. Absolute fail. when he apologized to China for mentioning Taiwan in Mandarin, it was Mandarin or Cantonese. It's one of the main Chinese languages. That was it. I mean, it's like, God, dude, you sold your soul. Please. All people say Kaufman wrestled women like a fairy boy. Then his girlfriend later revealed he was gay and his terminal lung cancer was AIDS. Interesting. But no, he didn't actually. I mean, it was staged. He wasn't really wrestling them, but he did that to upset people for attention. And it worked. And it opened the door for guys like Andrew Dice Clay, who was a terrible comedian. A terrible comedian. I can get into that at length, but, you know, there isn't enough time. Terrible comedian where things went very badly for him in the end. And he lost everything. He went from filling football stadiums to not being able to get a job in a bar. And we'll go ahead and we'll close out with the national debt clock here. Let me pull that up real quick to see where Doge is at. And Doge is 158 billion, actually 159 because it's 964 million. So it's going to hit 159 billion here any second. Picked up a little steam over the weekend, and Fluke Man says it was Mandarin. Yep. I can't remember because I know Mandarin and Cantonese are the two of the 9 main languages. But with that, we're at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Special thanks to Rodney for making a donation to the channel today. Always appreciated, goes a long way. Thank you, everyone else who was able to join us here today for the podcast. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again tomorrow.